In the last episode, we have seen how we can detect if the mouse is inside a rectangle. When we were drawing this rectangle, we started from the center here. So we knew X and Y, and then we used the width and the height. In our program, we were calling rect mode, and then here center. But rect mode has different options. You can call rect mode corner, or you can call rect mode corners. And depending on which one you choose, it's going to be easier or a little bit harder to calculate if the mouse is inside the rectangle. In this episode, let's try to use one of the other modes. I'm going to use rect mode corners. When you call rect mode corners, what happens is that the rect function here takes two parameters, but they are not the center and the width and the height, but they are the two corners, the top left corner and the bottom right corner. So you would say here x1, y1, x2, y2. And this would be located here, x1, y1, and on the opposite side, x2, y2. Why is this easier? Well, remember that to find out if the mouse is inside the rectangle, we have to check if the mouse is inside these four walls. But we are starting with the point from the center, so we have to move from here to the left, from the point up, from the point to the right, and from the point to the bottom. But this is not an issue if we are using rect mode corners, because we already know where these walls are. This is x1, y1, and this would be x2 and y2. So let's see how this program would look like. Going to start here from scratch, void setup. I will set a size of 400, 300, color mode HSP. Now let's define this rect mode corners. Let's define here a draw function. And at the top of the program, I'm going to declare these four variables for our rectangle: int x1, int y1, int x2, and int y2. And let's give them some values like 100, 50, this is going to be 300, and 100. So you can see that the rectangle is going to have a width of 200 pixels because it starts at 100 and it ends at 300. So there's 200 pixels difference. And the height is just going to be 50 pixels because it starts at 50 pixels from the top border of the screen and it ends 50 pixels below. And now let's define here two colors we can use for the background and for our rectangle. So I'm going to say here color BG color. This is going to be my background color. And FG, like foreground color. And when the program starts, I'm going to call a function called new color, which I'm going to define now. Let's say here that void new color is, and here we generate a color. I'm going to define here that the color values go up to 100, so between 0 and 100. So I'm going to say int h, this is going to be a hue, is random 100. So we have a random hue. Now I'm going to say that the background color is a color with this hue, which we just randomly generated. And it's going to have some saturation, 50, and it's going to be rather dark, 30. And the foreground color is going to have exactly the same hue, but it's going to be more saturated, so 80, and a lot of brightness. And now let's call here fill FG color. So whenever we draw some shapes on the screen, they're going to be using this color here. In our draw function here, we erase the screen every time. Background BG color. And then we will draw a rectangle using the four numbers at the beginning: x1, y1, x2, and y2. x1, y1, x2, and y2. Okay, until now we are not doing anything with the mouse. Let's run the program and see if it works. This is a float because random returns a float variable. So there is our rectangle. I'm gonna remove the black border, gonna say here no stroke. And you can see the colors are always related. They are 2 shades of green, or if I run it again, now they're kind of purple, blue. But the colors should always match because it's always the same hue, but just one is darker than the other. Now let's check if the mouse is inside the rectangle. And if we are clicking inside the rectangle, then we could generate a new color. So let's add here, before drawing the rectangle, if inside, this is a function I'm going to define now, and we could say and mouse pressed. So this means that at the same time, the mouse is inside the rectangle and the mouse is pressed. It's not enough that one of the two is true. If we move the mouse inside the box, but we don't press, nothing happens. Or if we press, but we are outside the rectangle, then nothing happens. When both are true, then let's generate a new color. And now, to finish the program, we have to define what is inside. Many times we define functions that begin with void, and then the name of the function, and parentheses and braces. In this case, this function is going to return some value, so we cannot use void. And we have to use boolean, which is the new data type we discovered. We want that this value here is a boolean. It's a true or false value. We want to know if it's inside or if it's not inside. So here we'd have to type boolean. And now here we could type our long if statement, which is going to be not so long now, because now we just have to check if mouse X is to the right of X1. This is the left border of the rectangle. And at the same time, mouse X is on the left side of X2, which is the right border. And mouse Y is below Y1. And at the same time, mouse Y is above Y2. So you can see this formula now is much shorter because we don't have to add here. We don't have to move from the center of the rectangle half of the width or half of the height. So if these 4 conditions here are true at the same time, we know we are inside. So we just can return true. And otherwise, if the mouse is not inside the rectangle, we can return false. So let's run the program now and see what happens. For now it's just running, nothing is happening. And if I click here, and if I leave it clicked, you can see it's really quickly changing the color. And if I click outside, nothing is happening. That's exactly what we wanted. We can make it a little bit simpler because we don't need actually this if statement. We could just return this condition here. So if we return this expression, now we have to get rid of all these. We just add here a semicolon. We are returning the result of this calculation. Is mouse X greater than X1 and mouse X is less than X2 and mouse Y is greater than Y1 and mouse Y is less than Y2. So we are just returning whatever value this expression has. So processing will come here and before returning anything, it will start checking this. We'll have a look at mouse X. Is it greater than X1? If it is, then it will continue. It will check and mouse X is less than X2. If that is true, then it will continue checking until the end. And if every condition is true, then it will return true. The effect would be like replacing this here with a true. That's what will happen internally, or false. It will depend on the result of calling this function. So now you know a way of calculating if a point is inside a rectangle. And it doesn't have to be the mouse. It could be any point. You just have to type here a certain X and a certain Y, and then you can check if this point defined by X and Y are inside this rectangle, which is defined by X1, X2, Y1, and Y2.